Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us for our Careers in Economics Alumni webinar series. Before we start, I'd like to acknowledge that Laurier's campuses are located on the traditional territories of the neutral Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee peoples. My name is Graham McCormick, and I'm the Corporate Relations Officer for the Lazaridis School of Business Economics, and I'm a BBA 2011 alumnus. I want to congratulate our audience today for getting into the Lazaridis School. By accepting your offer, you've joined a community that includes an alumni network of more than 30,000 engaged graduates working in 86 countries around the world. 2,000 of those grads are founders of their own businesses, and 600 hold positions of president or CEO. Today, we're going to be joined by a couple of those members for a unique opportunity to hear about their experiences at the Lazaridis School and their careers since graduating. You'll be able to ask the panelists questions during the webinar through the box on your screen. We'll be reserving questions today about our speaker's career and time at Laurier. I'd like to introduce our first panelist, Craig Wright. Craig is a BA Econ graduate from 1985. He is a senior vice president and chief economist at RBC. Craig, thanks for joining us today. Could you tell the students a little about yourself?
Sure, thanks Graham, and congratulations all for acceptance. Brief background on me, I was, as Graham suggested, graduated Laurier a long time ago, 1985. After Laurier, I went to look for jobs in the banking community and quickly found out that banks generally don't hire economics grads without a postgraduate degree. So I took a year to work and applied to some graduate schools, and not really interested in doing a whole bunch more in terms of work or more time at school. I looked for the shorter programs, and University of Toronto, which is basically where I grew up, was available. I applied, I got a job. When I graduated from U of T with my master's, I looked for a job again in the banking sector. The only jobs available at that time were in the public sector, and I didn't have any interest in public sector. So I traveled for a bit, came back, found a job at one of the banks, the Bank of Montreal. I worked there for 7 years, doing various jobs between macro, provincial, financial markets, and then moved to RBC in '94. I've been there ever since. My jobs there started on the trading floor, worked through and into the bank side. And then around 2000, my boss stepped away to run for politics. They made me acting chief economist, and notwithstanding not having a PhD or not being bilingual and being relatively young at the time, I was 38 years old, they managed to decide that I did a reasonable job acting as chief economist, so they gave it to me full time, and I've been there ever since now for about 20 years.
Interesting. I didn't know you were with the Bank of Montreal before that. Thanks for that.
Briefly.
Yeah, briefly. Our second panelist today is joining us from London, England. BA Econ 04 graduate and chief European macro strategist at TD Securities, Jackie Douglas. Jackie, thanks for joining us this evening. Can you give us just a little overview about yourself and your career thus far?
Sure, thanks for having me. So for my career, I started out at TD straight after university, and I've basically been there ever since. So I bleed green, I guess. So I ended up getting my foot in the door through a posting for a summer student. I was lucky that the person who was handed the job ad, she happened to do her undergrad degree at a university I won't mention and her master's degree at Laurier. So that's where she went to post the ad. And she's now actually the chief economist at TD Bank, Beata Karanci. She went to Laurier as well. So that's why the ad was posted there at Career Services. I got the summer job. I was actually planning on going to grad school to do my master's degree in the autumn. I didn't actually get into grad school anywhere that year. And fate kind of had it that a job opening ended up for a research assistant on the trading floor. So I went down there, spent a year there, applied to grad school again, got into two of my top choices. So just completely different market for whatever reason. So my boss was very kind and actually held my job for me for a year so I could go do my master's degree and come back again. He hired a research assistant on a 12-month contract so that way I could come back if I wanted to. So then I did come back after getting my master's degree in economics. I was on the trading floor in Toronto for about 6 years. I did about 3 years of Canada-US macro, 3 years of FX strategy, and then got offered a job in London in 2011. So moved here to cover European markets, Eurozone crisis, Brexit, all the fun things happening here. So I've been here ever since for about 9 years now, and got promoted to chief economist a couple of years ago, or chief European economist a couple of years ago.
Thanks, Jackie. I think, one of the things in there that I took away is the Laurier connection. Your connection with Beata and the job posting, really helped you on that first level. And
Yeah.
I hear and see a lot of that with our co-op postings. Our third panelist is Farah Omran, BA Econ and Financial Management graduate from 2016. She's a policy analyst at the C.D. Howe Institute. It's great to have you today. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thanks for having me. Like Graham said, sorry. I graduated from Laurier recently in 2016, finished my undergrad in econ and financial management, although I don't remember anything about the latter part. I went to grad school straight after my undergrad, actually like a week in between. I always knew I wanted to do grad school, although the master's experience was slightly traumatizing, so I steered away from PhD at that time. As part of my undergrad, it was the first year that the Bank of Canada was doing the monetary policy competition challenge, and I participated in that. And one of the committee, the judges, was actually the CEO of the current place that I'm working at, Bill Robson. And through Bill Robson, I got in touch with the VP of Research at the Institute. And I just held on to that connection like crazy. I made sure to contact Daniel every few months, remind him that I exist. And when I finally moved to Toronto for my master's, I went there and I was just like, listen, I'm new. I'm new to Canada generally, and just new to the workforce. Just give me anything. I just want to see how it's actually done. So I started working at the C.D. Howe as a research intern while doing my master's. And luckily, I did something right, it seems, and I got a part-time job since then and been with them since then.
Thanks, that was great. Joining us from the Bank of Canada is Joanne O'Guiney, BA Econ 2018 graduate. Joanne is a research assistant at the bank, and thanks for joining us. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, thanks for having me. My career has been very short because I just graduated about 2 years ago. So I participated in the Governor's Challenge that I think Farah was talking about, and that year Laurier won. So that was wonderful to be part of the winning team. And right after the competition, they posted a research assistant position, and having that on my resume was definitely a benefit, and also being able to just network with the team, with economists at the bank. And so right after I graduated, I was offered the job, and I moved to Ottawa there. I'm currently also pursuing my CPA designation because doing a double major as an economics and in accounting, I quite enjoy accounting, and I really didn't want the other part of my major to also go to waste. So I'm also pursuing that. And currently I am enrolled at Queen's University and will be starting my master's in the fall as well, in the Master's of Economics. So there it is. Yeah.
Exciting. A lot there. I didn't know you were working on your CPA. Well, we'll loop back to that later because I have a couple questions for that.
Yeah.
Our final panelist is Cindy McCormick. Cindy is intermediate accountant at BDO, working towards her CPA. Thanks for joining us. Cindy, tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I only graduated in December officially, so I have a very short career experience thus far. So I did my undergrad at Laurier, and then I did the accounting add-ons that they offer, which helps fast track some of that CPA process. So I was fortunate enough to do co-op during my time at Laurier, and I did all 3 of my terms at BDO. The first two were at a Chatham office, which is pretty close to my parents' house. And then for my last co-op term, I transferred to the Waterloo office where I currently work. I am working towards my my CPA designation. I'm in capstone 1 right now, and if the test is still on in September, I'll be writing in September.
Thanks. To kick things off, I'll ask the first couple questions. I'll be monitoring the chat. If there's any specific questions for our speakers, you don't hesitate to write in. To get started, Cindy, what drew you to economics, and what drew you to the economics program?
So the main thing that drew me to the economics program was it seemed so open-ended. Business did look attractive to me, but I wasn't sure that I wanted something that was more that seemed more communication based, and I'd rather have something more numbers based, as well as the opportunity for co-op. I think those were the main drivers for me to choose economics.
Jackie, same question. What drew you to the economics program and to study economics at the Lazaridis School?
Economics was actually my third major, so I didn't kind of find it right away. I didn't really know what it was before I took it. I took in first year, I went to a different university and took a very, very specific program called Space and Communication Science, thinking I was going to work at NASA. First year went okay. I was supposed to take 7 physics courses in second year, and I can do 1 or 2, but 7 was just out of the question. So then I transferred to math, and I transferred to Laurier, and I did the math with finance and accounting. Because my parents kind of encouraged me that, okay, you clearly don't know what you want to do, so maybe do something that's not just math, but also do something with, the math with finance and accounting just gives you a few more options so you can figure out what you want to do. So with that, I had to take my first year economics and business courses. It was the first year macro course I took that I found so interesting that I felt like it just explained everything on the evening news, that all of a sudden I was just like, oh, like that's what GDP growth is, and that's where inflation comes from, and that's why exchange rates move. And I understood like the world so much better. And so that's when I switched again to economics and stuck that one out and all the way to the end. So it was a bit of a roundabout route to get there.
Interesting. I didn't know you actually started somewhere else. I'm learning a little bit myself today. Farah, same question to you. What drew you to economics in first year?
I mean, this is perhaps slightly a cheesy answer, but it is the honest answer. So I grew up in a developing country, and I was just would watch Hollywood movies and news about Western countries and all of these things. And I guess I was just like curious and maybe also slightly jealous as a kid, like why can't we live the same way? What causes this difference and just complete standards of living? I think that question started developing at one point and just matured into deciding to study economics, because in my mind, I had no idea what economics is at the time, but it just seemed like it would explain my question. Yeah, I mean, being very far from Canada, Laurier, was prominent because I've never been away from home, so it was like a nice small city, student city, and Laurier had a good name when it comes to economics and business. So it was just, yeah, I started, and once I started learning what economics is, and I enjoyed it, and here we are.
And was there a reason why you opted to add the financial management in addition to your economics degree?
I think, yeah, I mean, I slightly was being sarcastic when I said I don't remember any of it, but it did feel like something also important, because I also didn't know exactly where I want to go with it. I wanted to leave the finance option open. It seemed like it had really good opportunities, and it's still finance within economics is really important. Like right now, my job is mainly working in the monetary policy and financial services sector, and you don't learn about the financial sector in economics on its own, I feel sometimes. So that was it wasn't very much of a targeted goal-oriented decision. It just felt like something that is good to do, and I topped it with a minor in mathematics because yeah, it just felt like the right combination.
I think the three of you made a really good point that the economics program does have a lot of different options, and it's not just traditional, you have to go and do one thing and become an economist. Thank you. Craig, question for you, a little bit different. How did your time at the Lazaridis School prepare you for your first job after graduating and for your career in general since then?
Yeah, I mean, similar to the others, it was more happenstance than planned that got me in economics. All my friends were taking business, so I decided to take something different. So I took economics, finance, and accounting option. And unlike Cindy and Joanne, I had no knowledge or interest in accounting, so I dropped that option pretty quick. But stayed with the economics, and I think in terms of, so I did an undergrad economics at Laurier, so 4 years there, and then I did a short master's at U of T for 8 months. So everything and anything I've learned in economics really came from the undergrad at Laurier. The master's degree was basically just a synopsis of everything we had taken in 4 years of undergrad. So, when I think of what school I graduated from, I think obviously that it was Laurier, not U of T. And I sort of, I guess, influenced my kids that way too, because I now have two sons that both graduated from Laurier as well. So I think that the school it brought a lot of, for an economist, whether it's the degree or the school, I think you tend to be generally well analytical, I think, well spoken, well written, and those are transferable skills across any job. And so I think Laurier instilled that, as well as a curiosity. And I think for good economists, there's obviously an intense bit of competitiveness interest. There's some initiative needed, and then I think curiosity, because nobody has the real full answer on everything. So you see something that's interesting, you dig a bit deeper, and hopefully move the storyline along further. But a lot of those skills I think I picked up at Laurier and were summarized later at U of T.
Oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense, given how the program's structured and the courses that the students will be taking when they start first year and then into second and third year. Joanna, same question to you. How did your time at the Lazaridis School prepare you for your first job at the bank? It's an exciting place to work, especially coming out as an undergraduate. How was it?
It was great. I think first of all, the Governor's Challenge was one of the most rewarding things I did in my undergrad. And that definitely prepared me for a focus on monetary policy. But one thing that also was very beneficial was the theoretical basis of understanding like Keynesian economics, and like it's very theoretical when you're in university. And then going into a policy work, having a good understanding of theory actually helps me to better understand why things are being done, because at my work they're not teaching you from the ground up. They're expecting you to have some basic understanding of economics, and so having been able to apply that theory in the Governor's Challenge definitely helped to transition better. Another thing that was very useful was the research aspect of my time at Laurier. So I did the research specialization as well, which meant that I had to do 2 undergraduate theses. And so the second thesis that I did was a 101 study, which required me to actually replicate a paper. And in policy work, you're not really spending a lot of time developing new research methods. You look at papers who have already done the work, and you're kind of copying that work and implementing it with the microdata, right? And so being able to actually have that kind of experience already in my undergraduate has been very helpful in working with some of the models that I currently work with, and being able to read the papers and then code the models and run it and debug and all these things. And a lot of statistical software also I learned at Laurier, learning R, Stata, eViews, which are all programs that I use right now in my work. And so there's a lot of hands-on experience and theoretical experience that I do gain. And so I would definitely encourage you to choose courses that challenge you, not just easy courses, because the easy courses are not what will give you the experience. So definitely take those, like forecasting methods, econometrics. They're hard, they're tough, but they definitely benefit me more in my current job. And obviously when I go into masters, I think they will also be really beneficial.
The point you raised are about, the courses you can take and and what you can learn in them and how you can apply them directly to work is an exceptional point. And the students will get an opportunity to really dive into those in the second, third, and fourth year. I remember doing one of them about queuing systems, and I never figured it out. I could never understand any of those programs. You talked about something else there just briefly, and I know Cindy, Joanna, Farah, you were all involved in it. Could one of you just describe to the students what the Bank of Canada Governor's Challenge is, and maybe someone can talk about our legacy and our reputation with that?
Maybe the winning team participant can do it.
I think Cindy's team also won the year after, right? Like you guys won.
Yeah, we won.
Yeah.
So I'll give a little brief description. If you guys want to add anything after, more than welcome. So the Governor's Challenge is held every year by the Bank of Canada, where universities across Canada are encouraged to participate, where you forecast the Canadian economy, you analyze risk, and then you just and you present that. And then from there, there's a question period, and then you get assessed based on that. And from there, you get ranked and you move on. And eventually, if you move on to the second round, you get to go to Ottawa and you get to go to the Bank of Canada. It's a really cool experience.
Did you get to meet the governor of the Bank of Canada?
Yes.
Yes. He sits in the presentation, which can be nerve-wracking if you make it to the final. But yeah, so you're acting essentially as policy advisors to the governing council in making a policy recommendation, like what should the bank do with the interest rate? Should they raise it, keep it, or reduce it based on your analysis of the Canadian economy?
That just must be amazing as an undergraduate student to get to do that. And it highlights the presentation skills that these students will learn in the coming years, because that's such a huge part of the economics program in the Lazaridis school, and a couple of the other options that they have while they're there, including extracurriculars.
Graham,
Jack? Yeah.
Sorry, just on that. I mean, the Governor's Challenge is not something I've participated in, but watching from it, I think it's a brilliant idea Governor Bola started in terms of a recruiting mechanism. I mean, in some sense, that's part of what it is Joanne's evidence of. You see these star candidates. So for new kids going in, that's a great exposure. And I think you'll see more and more of the banks looking at these teams now too, because we're a bit slow, but we're starting to figure it out.
And I would say, like, Laurier I think we've had at least 5 students being hired from the Governor's Challenge at the bank right after. So if you want to work at the bank, it's a great way to network.
Well, and Farah, you said that as well, with how you ended up at CD Howe Institute is, networking competition.
Totally. It was the luckiest thing ever. And if I hadn't been so adamant actually on doing my master's right after my undergrad, I would have totally used that link as an entry to the bank too. So yeah, like Joanne said, if you want to work at the bank, definitely try to get yourself into this challenge.
And it's a course, correct?
I believe now it counts as a course, yeah.
And what year would the students look to take that?
I think primarily a 4th year, but you can take it in 3rd year. You just have to have completed the prerequisite courses.
Yeah.
Jackie, question for you. What part of your career have you enjoyed the most thus far? You've been in London for a while. What has it been like to work in the city, work in one of the large financial hubs of the world?
It's been great working in London because you just get to cover so much. I mean, part of it is the time zones. When I go see clients, I have to know kind of I have to have an overview of like our Asian view and our Canada US view, as well as the European view, which I'm in charge of. But there's just a lot to cover. The other thing is the Europeans are always breaking something basically. So there's always something interesting going on. I moved here in 2011, which was the depths of the Eurozone crisis when Greece was blowing up and everything was just kind of going down like one country after another. So I had to get up to speed on that very, very quickly. But that keeps you very busy. You're in a world with very much experimental economics, I guess, all over the place for major central banks. But for, in Europe, everybody's at negative rates. You have the ECB's negative, and Swiss National Bank is negative. Sweden was negative up until a few months ago. And so you have this kind of grand monetary policy experiment going on that's, interesting to see. And then the UK, I guess, was feeling left out after Europe had been through so much. So we voted for Brexit a few years ago and broke everything that way. So you have that to follow as well. And, I've always been interested in the politics side of things too, and that is just so intertwined with monetary policy and with economics here in Europe. The ECBs especially, because you have just the politics of the European Union are so incredibly complex, and it's just so wrapped up in the history of the region. And so you have to combine the politics, the economics, and kind of the game strategy of what to do, of who's actually going to, who's going to kind of lay down and give up and let the other people have their way. So there's always a lot of interesting things going on in Europe. As like I said, everyone's kind of always breaking something. And on the trading floor too, where I've worked for pretty much my entire career, you have to be on top of everything all the time, which is challenging, but it's also, just really interesting. Things are always changing. There's always something new to look at. Like I'm always kind of looking at the most recent up-to-date developments of everything going on, because that's just the nature of the job. So there's just always a lot to keep you busy, and there's never any lack of anything interesting to discuss.
That sounds really exciting. Do you find being in London, you get an opportunity to run into or see other Lazaridis School Laurier alumni?
A little bit. Well, I mean, you're usually in London in a normal world without a pandemic. You're in London twice a year, kind of bringing everyone together. There are a couple of other people on our trading floor from TD who went to Laurier as well. So you have that around. There's also, my husband went to Laurier and graduated a couple of years before I did. Not business, but he has some friends from Laurier who are here in London as well, who he sees sometimes. So it's very much a small world. Everyone is always incredibly happy to talk to you when they find out, when you realize that you're both Laurier alumni. I think because it's always felt like a small university, that everyone is always happy to give you their time.
It's an excellent point. When these students, start class and when they end up on campus, they're going to realize that it's a great place to meet people, and that the connections they'll make and the ones they'll make after, there just is a really strong back to Laurier, strong tie. Craig, similar question. You've had an opportunity to work, with governors of the Bank of Canada, other chief economists, Canadian banks. What's that been like? How has that been, interacting with those individuals? And is there anything in your career that you've really enjoyed from doing that?
Yeah, I mean, so it's a small community of chartered banks in Canada. So a handful of us get together on a fairly regular basis. So Beata, also a Laurier grad like Jackie. So Beata and I actually worked together for a while when she had a little bit of a soft spot and left TD before and came to RBC for a while before she went back to TD. Senior Deputy Governor Wilkins, a Laurier grad. Brian Lewis, Chief Economist of Ontario Government, is also a Laurier grad. So I do bump into a few of the Laurier grads as we run around town and that. But in terms of the events I enjoy the most, it's the client events. There's a few of us on our team, and we do about 300 presentations a year, and I probably do about half of those presentations. So we get to see clients largely across Canada, some international travel, but we have strategists around the globe as well in similar roles as Jackie. But I think the clients is, we study the data, but they are the data. So to me, it's always a good check and balance on how we're seeing things. So if we're out in Alberta and say things look this way and the clients totally disagree, then it gives you a bit of a reality check. So it's sometimes sobering, but always informative. And often, I hope, they get as much out of the meetings as I do, but the client interaction is probably my favorite part of it. And you get to see some pretty impressive stories of Canadian entrepreneurs, innovators, and risk takers, and starting from very little to growing into being such a great Canadian success stories. And curiously, I've met with a number of the very wealthy Canadians and through this recent crisis, and I was always impressed with how each and every one of them, their biggest concern was not about their own businesses, what this crisis meant for Canada and how we can do better through this crisis. So very altruistic in a sense, which was, I kind of always suspected that, but it's great to see it in action.
So it's interesting, such an analytical job relies so much on the personal and the relationship side.
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing disruption, technology, but banking's still a people business, and we're an economist for the bank, so it's huge interaction, even, I mean, with colleagues, and that's, the small Laurier environment that, walking through the concourse and you can't help but bumping into people. It's a people school, and I'm in a people business, so it's all working out well so far.
Thanks. Joanna, you were involved on campus. You were part of the Economics Club. You were co-president, Power to Change. You were part of the Investment and Finance Association. Tell us a little bit about these extracurriculars, why you chose to get involved, and what benefits you saw, from being involved in some of these student clubs on campus.
Yeah, so I mean, Laurier community is just absolutely amazing. Like when I first started, I knew I wanted to be involved in like the business clubs because of like networking and all these different things. But specifically like the 3 clubs that I decided to participate in, the Economics Club at Laurier is a wonderful community there. You have a club where they focus on actually helping students with their courses, like they have prep time before exams, practice exams and things like that. And so being part of, studying economics, it was just a simple, like it made sense to join the Economics Club. And being part of that community, and you also get to participate and interact with your professors more and actually get to know them one-on-one. And so like Logan McLeod was heavily involved with the Economics Club, and I also, then he would like he got to know my name and around campus, and so that was really cool. And I joined the finance club actually for only about half a semester, I think, because I originally was in economics and financial management, because I thought I loved finance, and then after taking finance too, I realized finance was not for me, and I dropped out of the club. But I did participate in a stock market pitch competition, which was also a great competition to participate in, as it really exposed me to finance. Like I got to actually know that I don't want to be on a trading floor. I don't want to talk about stocks all day. So that was also a very good experience. And in addition to that, I'm a Christian, and so being part of a Christian community was very important to me. And so to be able to interact with other people in the community was good. So that's how I was part of Laurier Power to Change, which is a Christian club on campus. But what was really cool was we actually got to interact with other clubs on campus as well, like the Economics Club. Combines with LIFA, which is a finance club, to run events, and you meet people from all over, and they invite economists to come on campus, and you get to talk to them and their panelists, and you ask questions. So like I would heavily encourage being part of not only the business clubs. I think find also a club that is a hobby, is an interest that you are, a community or a belief, like be part of that, because being part of definitely like Lazaridis School of Business and Economics was helpful and beneficial, and I made great friends that I still communicate with. But definitely doing something that I enjoy every week, being part of Party Change, helped me to expand my Laurier community, because I got to be friends with students in other faculties, in the music faculty, art, science, and I wouldn't really have gotten to know them as much if I didn't expand my involvement in clubs. There's a cupcake club, so there's a salsa club that I wanted to join, but time commitment. So like there's so many different clubs on campus, and the student union, it's amazing the support that you get, like being president of a club. There's an amazing support. that they provide all the clubs and the funding they provide all the clubs. And I was very, very surprised. And I like being ahead of a club and communicating with a counterpart at the UW campus. I can 100% say that our student union is superb and far better than the than the community there at UW and the funding that the clubs get. So I would 100% encourage you to be part of the community there.
You know, you make an exceptional point that, you know, these students are going to spend so much time in the Lazaridis school, you know, in their upper years, that there's so many opportunities to get involved across Laurier, not only on, you know, Laurier specific clubs, but also, you know, there are a lot of business specific clubs within the business school. Farah, same question to you. I know you were involved a little bit, both from a club's perspective, but you're also a TA and a research assistant. What was that?
I definitely filled my time more with TA-ship and RA-ship than clubs, and but I do. That's one of my regrets, actually, to have, you know, been involved in more clubs around the campus for TA. So Joanne mentioned Logan McLeod, who just has been a huge staple in my life, like many other Laurier professors. And if we get to it later, I'll be raving about how much that's my favorite thing. But Logan McLeod actually approached me in second year after having taken the micro course with him and proposed. We had not ever provided TA, like I forgot what we call the classes that a TA teaches, not the professor.
SI?
Tutorials?
Oh yeah, tutorials. Yeah, so at that point, apparently we had not been providing econ tutorials in the department. And so it was a pilot project kinda. And McLeod approached me asking me if I would be interested in TAing. And I thought he was crazy, you know. I'm still working on my English. I'm still like, I just took the course last semester. It made me so scared, but it made me so scared that I decided to do it. Like right there, I was just like, I'll do it. And it was amazing. It was such a satisfying experience. It definitely helped so much with my speaking and presentation skills and being able to speak in front of an audience, because you've got all these students staring at you. And it was just so satisfying to see one of them just understand something. Like it would be just the most satisfying feeling you get. And yeah, it became a thing. Like I TA'd for the rest of my undergrad, and it continued to be better. You know, like I started holding my own. When there was exams, students would be more scared than usual, so I would hold my own sessions outside of like the scheduled tutorials, and it was really nice just to it helped me even understand the course itself more. You know, I took it the first time, I did well the first time, but there were things that I was continuously learning every time I go over it again, and that was also very nice for me. And the RA-ship positions as well, also through my connections with professors, because some of them were on campus, but some of them were with Balsillie School, for example, but those were also managed through my relationships with my professors. So that's definitely a big thing to keep in mind.
I think you highlighted, you know, two things really clearly for me, that one of the opportunities by, you know, teaching the information back is that you get a better grasp on it. But there's also so many opportunities for students who need support can get support. You know, that, you know, the whole structure is built to help the students succeed and to do well in economics in the economics program. I do see we have a couple write-in questions. So I think I'm going to pick one of them. It's directed to Cindy and Joanne. What made you decide to do accounting along with the economics, and did it affect any of your graduation options? And then specifically follow up for Cindy, you know, what is it like working at an accounting firm with an economics degree? Cindy, we can start with you.
So I think it was just in high school, I took an accounting course and I was just like, this is going to be a good job someday. I'll just choose to do this. It just kind of was like, it'll have good pay, it'll be fine. And I kind of just stuck with that. And by chance, I ended up liking accounting too, which is a nice treat with that. And so that it kind of was more just like a gut instinct to kind of choose a career like that, to be to be considered a professional too is nice. Have a designation the big fancy CPA name was a nice tag on the end. But working in public accounting is very unique during COVID, but during a regular say busy season, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of hours, but it's very rewarding. You're in contact with clients regularly, giving them a lot of support. You learn so much. You have a lot of support from your coworkers, and you get to apply a lot of the skills you do and theory that you do learn at school. So it all lines up that way. And I've been really enjoying myself for these 6 months I've been working full time, but the expectations do change from compared to when you're a co-op student to when you're full time. And I think if it keeps going like this, I'll have a happy career.
I think you're right. I think, accounting is a great option that you can take coming out of the economics program. And, you're not the only person who's pursuing a CPA from it. Joanna, same question to you. What made you really think about, now continuing the CPA designation?
Well, in terms of choosing accounting with economics, like I said earlier, I originally going to university, actually, I wanted to do accounting and finance management. And I applied to University of Waterloo and I got rejected. And so Laurier was my second choice. And I got into the econ program. But I didn't just want to do economics because in my first year, I didn't know what job prospects were actually with economics. I did economics in high school, but my teachers that studied economics were teachers and I didn't want to be a teacher. So I thought I had to do something else with economics. And economics and finance, I tried that. I realized I can't do finance. I'm not great at it. And I enjoyed accounting. So it just made sense to do economics and accounting. And graduating and now pursuing a CPA. The reason, honestly, the reason I'm pursuing a CPA is my parents really influenced me. I really thought, like, I graduated, I started working at the bank, and I said, oh, I'm done with accounting. I'm going to choose economics as a career. And then my parents called me and said, well, you have a year. Your contract is about 2 years. You can do the accounting while you work. Have both credentials. I'm sure it would be useful later on. So they persuaded me, and I signed up to continue my accounting designation, and it has been great. Like I'm glad I didn't give up on it. And so it'll be interesting to see which I choose, because having a master's and then the CPA designation, I think I will be well ready to enter into both fields depending on where the opportunity comes.
Absolutely. With a master's and a CPA, you'll be very competitive, and you'll be able to, find a role that really fits you and something that you really want to do. Craig, what did you enjoy most about your time at Laurier and being in Waterloo?
I guess the easy answer is Oktoberfest, but that's probably not the right one.
Well, not this year. I think it'll be pushed for at least a year, but.
Yeah, I like the area. I like that it was mentioned earlier. It was a small school, not too small. Being from Toronto, it was far enough away from my parents, that not too far that I wouldn't get the odd care package. And I never lived in residence, so the odd care package was very helpful. The region I worked through university in Kitchener. And so I, managed to see a bit of the city when I was walking from my place in Waterloo to Kitchener, and always enjoyed the area. The Laurier itself, as I said, the experience there was amazing, and I think the breadth of courses, the professors. I still keep in touch with a couple of professors in FARA as well, in terms of Pierre Siklos on our monetary policy committee that we sit on, so I still keep in touch. And Pierre was brand new when I started there. It was, I think his first course was Introductory Econometrics in second year, and I think the class average was 36, because professors are learning how to write exams too, right? And kids are learning how to write them in econometrics. When I was there, it was the first time you take it was in second year, but I remember Pierre in that class saying that most of you would go on to grad school, and second year university, everybody thought, no way, he doesn't know anything. And look at our panel today, everybody has either gone on to grad school or is planning on going to grad school. So sometimes you have to listen to your professors, but I thought the region and the school was just the right fit for me.
Thanks, Craig. Cindy, same question. You're still, well, you're living, you're working in, Waterloo. How have you found it, and what did you enjoy most about being at Laurier?
So I was born and raised on a farm in southwestern Ontario. I'm a first generation student, so Waterloo is a big city to me. And I took my first like public transportation here. Like I've first time getting delivery was in Waterloo. It's been a time of first. So I think that's what I like the most of it, where it's like a step into the city, but like not a city as in comparison to Toronto. So I like the small community. I liked how accessible it is to get everywhere. I'm a big fan of the LRT. I have a car here, but I will take LRT every day to work when I'm allowed back in office. And it's just been a really good fit for me that way, as far as like expanding my bridges, but not like going too far.
You, I read that, part of the roles you had is you helped, outreach and provide information to students when you're on campus. Is there anything you would, tell these students today that you told those students when you were working with Walusa?
On my time, so I've worked as a volunteer as an icebreaker, which is during orientation, and then in university affairs, so university affairs is a club on students union, which you just kind of help advocate for students' rights. And so there's support for students, such as like if you're having landlord and tenant issues, if just other student rights like of that nature. So I think when it comes to like first year and just students, like there's so many more resources that you're never gonna realize, and you're gonna go through your whole like university career like not even realizing perhaps. Like so I recommend just, really not researching about what other options there are, but like I guess listening to all the presentations you have can tell you about like getting your benefits. Don't forget to opt out if those don't apply. And then with Students Union, there's like a million different ways of help that you can get. You just have to know what you're looking for and then ask those questions.
Excellent point, Cindy. Jackie, question for you. What skills do you think are important for aspiring economists?
I think what we look for, one of the things we look for, so we have a 12-month internship kind of every year on our team. So we're, on an annual basis kind of hiring one student who comes in every single year. I think one of the big things we look for is someone who has kind of an obvious interest in economics and markets and politics, and just kind of a general awareness of what's going on day to day. So we'll ask them questions about, kind of something about Brexit that if you've read the press, you should have a reasonably knowledgeable answer. So we'll go through some of those kinds of questions in politics, and just keeping an eye out on relevant what's happening in the real world. When I had my job interview, I know that was something that kind of came up of what the Bank of Canada had just done. I kind of knew what the Bank of Canada had just done. I knew what they were saying, what way they were leaning towards, whether they were leaning towards, hiking or cutting at that point. Just having some general knowledge of what's going on that side is actually very important, just to show that you're not just kind of sitting there with your nose in the textbooks, that you are able to kind of apply your knowledge to what's going on in the real world. So, we'll ask some questions about, something like currency markets too, of, do you think, if the pound, coming from the UK, if the pound appreciates by, 20%, how does that affect what the Bank of England does? Do you think the Bank of England is more likely to hike or cut in that scenario? And just something that shows that you're able to think through, like take the things you learned and actually, not just write down the mathematical equations, but actually apply it to the real world. I think that's one of the things we value. I would say also being able to write helps a lot. Being a good writer can be very, very important. In my job, I swear, half my day writing, if not more, because we're constantly writing things to publish. Another thing is Excel skills. So that's something that I wish I had done more of and gotten more of in undergrad. My interns, I think, always very quickly eclipse me in their Excel skills, unfortunately, because I'm just old now and too old to learn properly anymore. But just a lot of those skills. One thing Joanne mentioned was learning like the eViews and all of those econometrics programs at Laurier. That was something that really helped me as well. The fact that I knew my way pretty well around eViews, knew how to program in eViews, and then that's kind of applicable to being able to learn stata similar But I would say those are the kinds of things to watch out for, is look for opportunities to learn Excel. That's a big one because every workplace you will be working with Excel. The more you can do with that, the better. I would say learning the econometrics programs is great. Work on your writing skills, that's important, and just read the news. Make sure you're aware of what's going on. You know, Bank of Canada has a very easy subscribe to their press releases button on their website. Do that. Read, you know, just as something very simple to do. Those kinds of things I think help a lot in the workplace when you're going to interview.
Those are excellent points, Jackie. I was going to say, Bank of Canada, you can subscribe to their, newsletters and announcements. These students will be, really far ahead by the time they get their second and third year. Farah, Joanna, Cindy, did you take or participate in any of the PRISM resource courses around Excel and around any of the programs, any of the things outside of classes?
I myself never did, but I was gonna say that the only reason why I felt very comfortable with Excel coming out of Laurier was my math courses. Those make heavy use of Excel. And just a follow-up note, from my experience, they taught me Stata. For my RA-ship, I learned eViews, but I encourage students to learn more coding programs. Don't just stick to one. Each employer tends to have a preference, so when you have all of them, it's really good. As for the PRISM resources, I didn't participate, but I always felt like it was very interesting and helpful, but I just didn't have time to do it.
Joanna, Cindy, could either of you talk just briefly what PRISM is or what their benefit can be to the students?
Yeah, sure, I could. So I did participate in some PRISM resources. So PRISM is an organization at Laurier that provides kind of like boot camp learning opportunities to learn different programs. So you can learn R, you can learn Excel, Microsoft, like they teach you Microsoft Office, and you can actually get certified through PRISM. You do an exam and then they print your certificate and everything. You can actually have that in your resume. So I did that for Microsoft Office in my second year. I also participated in Bloomberg. So what's amazing is that PRISM actually has access to Bloomberg terminal. Like those things are expensive and they have multiple, at least 10. So I would say take advantage of learning Bloomberg and researching and how to research and use it, especially if you want to go into finance. That's an amazing skill to have. So yeah, it's a great resource to use. You can also actually rent if you lose your laptop or something's wrong with your laptop. They actually like allow you to rent their laptops, Mac or PCs for a week, and that's actually exclusive to only Lazaridis School of Business and Economics students. So I used that in my final year because I had issues with my computer. So there are multiple resources that you can use for PRISM, and it's a great, and you're paying for it in your tuition, so might as well use it.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's a great resource, and the Bloomberg terminals and the courses you can take around them really help you once you get into the workforce and start doing co-ops. I'm just looking at the clock and I'm noticing we're almost out of time. So I'd like to ask everyone one last question. Cindy, we'll start with you. If you could go back and give yourself advice before you started university, what would it be?
I think it would be to just manage my time differently. I try really hard at school and that is really awesome, but I think I could have given myself a little bit more leniency sometimes and maybe didn't have as high expectations.
Okay, interesting. Joanna, what would you tell yourself starting first year?
I would say take linear algebra. I know it sucks. It's hard. I didn't like it's not like matrices are not fun, but take it. It's useful. It's beneficial. Suffer through it. Power through it. And I say the second thing would be use your summers to actually have fun. You have the rest after you graduate. You have the rest of your life to continue working and going to school. There are very few times where you get 4 months of where you can allocate to yourself and do whatever you want. So yes, you will, if you want to go into co-op after second year, you're that's set for you. But use that first 4 months to do something fun. I know it's a little bit hard to travel nowadays, but I traveled in my summers and I don't regret that because now I cannot travel and I'm going back to school in the fall. And even when it opens up, I'm going to be a broke student again. So I'd say enjoy your summers and take linear algebra. Yeah, those are the two main things I would say.
So balance, I like that. Strike a balance. Both Cindy and Joanna both find some balance. Farah, what would you tell yourself starting first year?
I definitely, from also what Jackie said, definitely be more informed. I feel like I was way too focused on surviving than definitely stay more informed. Be informed. Make sure you leave with a story. You know, like what econ is at the end of the day is a story. Make sure you have that with your head. Don't just have different equations and memorized and no story behind it to apply it to the real world. And do more things that scare you.
It's really good advice. You know, the whole experience you students are going to go through is going to be scary, but you know, it's in that period is where you're going to grow.
Exactly, and it's in that period where if you fail, it's okay. You know, I made many mistakes in my undergrad, and here I am.
Jackie, if you could go back and tell yourself something before you started university, what would you tell yourself?
I think for myself personally, I wish I would have gotten more involved at Laurier. I think that I was just kind of focused on trying to figure out what I wanted to do since, as I mentioned, I went through 3 majors and just didn't really know and was a bit more kind of focused on that side of things. But I do wish I would have gotten more involved. You know, my husband, for instance, is Laurier alumni, and he was an icebreaker, and he was a Don, and he was an ambassador, and he kind of, you know, did it all. And just he has kind of the memories that I wish I had a little bit more of that side of things. I would also just say from kind of the big picture perspective is use the alumni network. I've been contacted by, I can't tell you how many students from the university that shall remain nameless where I got my master's degree. I have had so many of them contact me asking for advice about how to get into economics and where to go and what to do. I have been contacted by exactly one Laurier person ever. Even though I graduated many, many years ago. And I find that Laurier students often are not as aggressive about that and maybe should be using their alumni network far more. I mean, you have, you know, the chief economists from a couple of Canada's biggest banks that are Laurier alumni to start with, and just so many on Bay Street because it's such a good program that, you know, I know so many of the banks just hire so much from, you know, Laurier because you have that business side and you have the, you know, having the economics, and it's just such a kind of a good marriage of skills. So there are so many out there if you do your hunting, and just look for them and use them and start talking to them early on to try to figure out what you want to do. Laurier alumni are so friendly and so happy to talk to you and give you some of their time. So use that, to take advantage of that.
It's really good advice.
Hope I don't have 1,000 emails tomorrow.
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah. I hope
not all at once.
I think you've also opened up Craig's inbox as well there. No, it's really good advice. As students, you know, you're a part of a community now and a network, and part of that is to use that and, you know, ask questions and ask for help. And the alumni base is there. So, Jackie, really good points. Craig, final word to you. What would you tell yourself if you could go back?
So let me just follow on Jackie's comment. It's great advice because I don't think any of us did it as much as we should have or could have. And I think, you know, we have a family scholarship, so I get to hear at least once a year from the recipient of the scholarship award. But we're all busy, but we will all get back to students when they do it. It helps them, but it also shows initiative, which is one of the things we're all looking for when we're doing hiring. But advice to me, advice my father gave me that I wish I would have listened to, and he said, just enjoy your time at university. It's the easiest time of your life. And I didn't believe him at the time, but you know, none of us now work less than 9 to 5 on a weekly basis. And I remember in 4th year thinking, well, let's just work Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. And we still couldn't keep that pace up, and that was a relatively easy pace with hindsight. So enjoy your time. You'll get a lot of time to work hard later.
Good advice, Craig. Craig, Jackie, Farah, Joanna, Cindy, on behalf of everyone today, I'd like to thank you for sharing your insights and experience with us. It isn't every day that students get an opportunity to hear from, you know, leading alumnists, you know, in economics and from the economics program. Our audience members, join me on Monday for our next Careers In webinar, where we'll be talking to alumni working in marketing. Don't forget to follow the Lazaridis School on our social accounts to stay up to date on important information. And thank you again for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks, Bill.